Infodump episode 2.
Let's go. Last episode we talked about Formula One. If you want to listen to that's the last episode.
Uh,
Infodump is a podcast where two members of the public, don't smite and no thank you, uh, use the power of their Asperger's syndrome to dump info at each other about their special interests.
yeah.
Last episode was Don't Smite's turn, so this episode is my turn. Um, and I've decided to talk about something which sounds like a really cool sci-fi thing, but is actually fairly mundane. The Gemini Protocol.
When you started talking about the Gemini protocols, I go, did no thank you into another sci-fi show?
Exactly. It sounds like a TTRPG or something,
Yeah.
or like a book. Like yeah, but it's just boring, which is why I like it. Okay, so uh, to to explain what Gemini is, we need to know uh, a few basic things to understand how we got to where we are. So I'm sure everyone knows this, but I will talk about it anyway. So back in the early days before the internet was a thing, or when the internet was a thing, but it was very very baby mode. Uh, there was this guy called Tim Berners-Lee who invented something called the hyperlink, and the hyperlink is pretty much the basis of what makes the internet a very powerful tool. You all know what a hyperlink is. It's when you click on blue text and it takes you to a different page. Before that, the internet was just a collection of loose documents. The entire internet was sort of like the dark web, like the real, not the stuff you can find on Tor, but like stuff that is just like documents stored somewhere that are accessible only by people who know how to access those documents. Like that's what the internet was. And Tim Berners-Lee invented the hyperlink, which is a way of sort of linking to other documents, so you could go from very quickly and easily and logically uh, from one document to another, and they all interconnect into almost like some sort of web, like some sort of worldwide web of documents interconnected. Very interesting.
I mean, the World
Or
Wide Web
maybe,
happened way after the internet too.
yeah, that's what I'm saying. Tim Berners-Lee invented the World Wide Web, not the internet.
Mm.
uh, the, the the internet existed before hyperlinks, but hyperlinks were invented and turned the internet into something that was much more useful, and that was Tim Berners-Lee. Uh, and also hypertext, which is a hyperlink that is text, which is probably what you're used to using, because that's what most of them are. Um, and to do this, there was a protocol invented, because the internet isn't magic. Someone needs to, explain how to do things, called the Hypertext Transfer Protocol, or HTTP, which is what you're probably very, very familiar with, although maybe you're more familiar with HTTPS, which we'll get to. Um, so HTTP is a way of uh, communicating to a browser how to display a web page. So a web page isn't what you see. Like what you see is a render of the HTML, which is going on behind the scenes, right? And HTML is just a script which browsers know how to read, and it tells the browser, you know, what to render on screen. Uh, it's like a language basically that the browser knows how to decode and turn into something that your eyes can read. And it's made so that humans can interface with machines, but it's not a programming language, even though sometimes it looks so complicated that it might as well be one. Uh, Now, back in the day, HTML was very limited, and the HTTP was very limited, because the internet was very limited itself. Download, we're talking very, very slow dial-up connections. Everything was just text-based websites, and it was made to be that. The internet was made to be a place to share documents and textual information. You know, you even if you could share images, which I think you could technically share images in the early days of the internet. Firstly, image compression was still early days. JPEG hadn't even been invented yet. And secondly, even a JPEG image of any reasonable resolution would take maybe hours to download, which may sound absurd to us living in the modern era, but you know, this was a thing that happened at one time. So it was all text, and it was all very basic. If you've ever seen a website that is just HTML, you know how basic it is. Like CSS came later, and then later came JavaScript and all of the evils in the world. So yeah, there was just HTML, and back then there was also another competitor to HTML. There was another protocol that was also fairly popular, maybe not equally maybe slightly less popular than HTML, but also fairly popular. And for a while, there was sort of questions about what would actually become the standard for the web, or if because there were other protocols floating around at the time, and still to this day. And this is something I'll talk about. Maybe I should just talk about this now. Like, what is a protocol? Because you probably think the only protocol you use is HTTP, but you almost certainly have experience with many other types of protocol. So, you ever use email? Email is a different web protocol. It's most people these days probably think email is just webmail, but email didn't used to be webmail. Webmail was invented later. You used to have to. Many people still do use a separate email client because email is not HTML. It's a different protocol and a
What's
different client.
webmail?
Webmail is just a like Gmail, like a mail client that renders
Oh
in a
yeah,
web
yeah,
browser.
yeah, yeah.
Uh, so yeah, like email is a different protocol. It doesn't send your email over HTML. It sends it over email. It's a different thing. IRC, Internet Relay Chat, also another protocol. You wouldn't do instant messaging over email. It wasn't made for that. It was made for slower, longer messages. You wouldn't do instant messaging over HTML because it doesn't make any fucking sense to do that. If you wanted to do instant messaging, there was its own protocol, IRC. Many people still use IRC to this day. Uh, you've probably another protocol that you may have used if you're a certain type of person is BitTorrent. BitTorrent is a separate web protocol that is optimized for downloading files or sharing files. You can technically share files over with other protocols, but BitTorrent is specifically for peer-to-peer file sharing. So you probably almost certainly don't just use HTML to communicate with the internet.
Oh no, thank you. Just cut out.
In the day, there
Oh no,
was
no, you cut out.
HTTP. Hello?
No, you cut out after you said that's not the only protocol you use.
I think so. You heard me talk about torrents, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So back to what I was saying, or back in the day when HTTP. Also, I think I accidentally used HTTP and HTML interchangeably
Mhm.
for a second there. They're not the same thing. I just messed up. Uh, I meant to say, if I said HTML, I probably meant to say HTTP. So back to the protocol wars, which never really amounted to a protocol war. Uh, there, people weren't sure which was going to be the dominant protocol of the internet. Uh, Remember, pre CSS, pre JavaScript. There was another protocol that was fairly popular for displaying documents, which is what HTTP was made for, which was called Gopher. And Gopher is fairly similar to HTTP. It does some things differently. Uh, you'll find if you use Gopher, I think they call them. All of these protocols have stupid names for the things that they are. So, like a document that is on the web is called a website, right? Kind
Mhm.
of makes sense. We're all fairly familiar with it. But if you think about it, it's kind of a weird name. Well, it's not as stupid as a gopher holes, which is what they fucking call gopher dope. Yeah, it's stupid. It's absolutely stupid. I don't know why people think it's neat or any. It's stupid. So I'm just going to call them sites because that's the colloquial name for anything document on the website. Like anything served on the internet is normally a site. Uh, So Gopher sites generally are structured more like a file system, uh, which technically all websites are kind of file systems that you're browsing. Uh, like you start from the home directory, which is like a home page, and you click deeper into the website. You're accessing documents deeper into the file system. Like when you look at a URL and the URL says like home and then home slash projects slash project one dot html, like that's really what you're looking at is the file system of the server that the HTTP site is on. Gopher is a bit more obvious about the fact that it's a file system, uh, 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 which gives it a slightly different feel. But in general, the stuff you can do with plain HTTP or HTML, you can do with Gopher generally. There are a few quirks that make Gopher slightly worse at certain things, and maybe slightly better at other things. Uh, One of the things that Gopher kind of sucks at is, which is a bit of a problem for uh, being a text-based protocol, rendering. Like it's kind of limited in its font rendering capabilities,
Mm.
uh, which is a big problem. And also, you can't. I actually, I'm not sure if this is a thing in Gopher or not. I know it's not a thing in Gemini, and I'm just assuming that the same is in Gopher. I haven't actually checked, but I think you can't do inline links. So a link has to be on its own separate line, due to the format, the way it's formatted.
Mm.
I need to double check that. I know that's the case in Gemini. I don't use Gopher very much, so I don't really know about it, but I believe that's the case.
Mm.
Uh, so there's a few problems like that, and no images,
Yeah.
which is maybe the biggest problem. I mean, you can host images on a website, which is actually at this time in internet history would have been how most images were distributed. You would host an image on the website, and when you wanted to view that image, you would click a link. The image would download onto your computer, and you'd open it in whatever image viewer you're using. That's probably back in this time how people were displaying images even over HTTP as well. Um, these days, internet speeds are fast enough where that feels weird and sluggish to do, but that was kind of the standard. If you
Mm.
wanted to open a video over the internet, you used Real Player back then.
Oh,
Like
you
you
opened the
wouldn't have
video over the internet back then.
you get well, okay, maybe we're talking a little later,
Yeah, yeah,
late '90s. Like early video streaming on the internet was a thing. You didn't stream it in YouTube.com on an inbuilt video player. You
yeah. Mm.
streamed it Real Player, which was a separate program that was designed to do video codecs. Uh, you know, same
That's
sort
cool.
of thing. So Gopher was, yeah, it's kind of, I compare it to VHS versus Betamax, where they're both kind of usable, but VHS one, it's the same, or maybe Blu-ray versus HD DVD for Zoomers. Actually, no, Zoomers don't know what the fuck a DVD is. Uh, um, there isn't really a comparison
I mean, the
in the
closest
single plan.
comparison is like fucking. Fuck. There's no comparison.
Yeah, I was gonna say iPhone versus Android, but those are still like both popular.
Yeah.
Like, was there a time when like two things might have been popular and one triumphed over the other one recently? But it doesn't happen anymore because all tech is just owned by like five monopolies.
Oh, there's the one fucking. What's that one console? The handheld one? That's really
Which one?
popular in
The PSP?
Japan.
The PSP?
Yeah, it's like PSP versus Nintendo DS.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I kind of feel like everyone knew the PSP was never going to win that console war. But yeah, that is a good comparison. Uh, so yeah, Gopher ended up sort of slipping by the wayside. But early browse, like one of the critiques of these alternative document serving protocols is that like browsers don't, like most browsers don't have a feature for it. Like, well, browsers used to, like Netscape used to be able to serve Gopher sites as well as websites. Uh, it could do both because you both of them were fairly common. Um,
Mm-hmm.
that's just an example. But anyway, same way Brave has WebTorrent functionality built in because torrents are popular these days. Uh,
God, I wish.
but yeah. So Gopher kind of fell by the wayside, and then one of the reasons Gopher fell by the wayside is because it was harder to extend, or less people extended it. I don't know exactly why. I'm not a programmer. I don't know the details. But whereas HTTP and HTML were much more extensible, with CSS, you could make your site look really pretty by 90s standards. And then there was JavaScript, which, has lots of really useful things about it. JavaScript is very useful. You can do lots of genuinely useful things with JavaScript. Also SQL, which I know everyone says it's SQL, but I've never managed to get my brain to pronounce it SQL. I just say SQL. I also pronounce ed, the standard text editor, as ed. So I guess I'm just a retard.
Wait, no,
But yeah,
SQL isn't pronounced SQL.
a lot of people pronounce it SQL.
It's pronounced SQL.
Yeah.
Apparently both are correct.
Well, there you go. The next you have to pronounce. I still pronounce latex as latex and not latex.
Next you're gonna say, I pronounce skif, no chief.
Skifnajif. Yeah, I pronounce GIF as Skifnajif.
Yeah, no thank you. I'm gonna send you a GIF image real quick.
No, I pronounce
Jiffy.
it as Chai. I pronounce it as Chai. That's what Idea Channel used to do. Do you remember Idea Channel?
I don't think I was ever into Idea Channel.
They were a good YouTube channel, but yeah, he used to use like a different weird pronunciation of GIF every time just to piss people off, and one of them was Chaif.
Yeah, I know who Idea Channel is. I just haven't watched all of their videos.
It was good for the time. Looking back, the videos don't hold up.
Oh, I fucking watched a Smush video a few days ago. Because I was like,
oh,
I wonder what
don't
those...
hold up.
They don't fucking hold up. They just don't fucking hold up.
They're just awful.
It was so impressive
As far
for
as
the
I
time.
can tell, yeah. As far as I can tell, the only videos that hold up from the early internet, or early YouTube, I mean, is Angry Video Game Nerd. Everything else I've gone back and watched from my childhood is just terrible by moderns. I just awful.
Oh god, fucking Equals Free is the worst, because that's just...
It's so bad.
It's
How
so
did we ever find it funny?
How did we fucking watch Equals Free every day?
I don't know what was wrong with me.
Yeah.
Tobuscus. You ever go back and watch old Tobuscus videos?
No, I don't. I mean, I have a year ago. I was like, oh, let's watch Tobuscus Angry Wheels or whatever the fuck it was called. It was bad, so I was like, oh, this is bad.
I tried to watch old. I was gonna rewatch all of Shadow of Israfel, but it's just too slow and boring and bad.
Oh yeah, I tried to watch the fucking Jaffa Cake Factory series because I remember being really hyped for that when I was younger, and
yeah.
Then I just fucking watched the first few episodes, and I was like, oh, this is just fucking garbage. It was fine, I guess.
Yeah. The Yogscast Tagit server was the predecessor to modern Hermitcraft.
I like how they say fuck in Yogscast.
Yeah, that's cool. I do appreciate it. You ever watch Wells Knight's videos? I've never watched any of his videos, but whenever I see him around, he seems like he just is in 2007 permanently.
I mean, the thing with Wells Knight is he was good exclusively in season 6. All other Wells Knight videos are just completely unwatchable for me, because he just sounds like he hates being alive, because he hates being alive. But his season 6 was
What's with his mic quality?
I have no fucking clue. He used to have really cool he used to have a really cool soundtrack. He used to build really cool things, and then he just fucking couldn't anymore for YouTube reasons. But he still had a good season. I think he's actually his season 5 was fine also. I think his videos in season 7 and 8 have just been fucking depressing.
Okay.
Yeah. This is my real.
Anyway, back to what we were talking about.
Mm-hmm.
So, Gopher became no longer popular or used by very many people at all because it's fucking Gopher and it's like incredibly limited. You can just to make sure what it's clear what Gopher can do. You can only serve text websites with hyperlinks um, and no images, no like styling. Like all the styling is done by the client side, not by the server side. So you don't like specify uh, how your website will look to other people, other than like very basic text formatting that often gets scrubbed by the client. Uh, Now, a lot of web designers hate this because they don't have control over how their website's going to look on their user's machine, which sounds like a pretty damn obvious disadvantage compared to HTML or HTTP. I mean, which can do much more advanced web design stuff with CSS and with JavaScript, and like tables. You can't do tables. You can't do tables with like very basic shit. You can't do columns. Like everything's in one column. Uh, I saw someone writing a complaint about how Gemini and Gopher suck, and it was like, you can't do columns, something which printing presses in the 1800s could do. If the technology can't do something, yeah, I thought that was funny. Anyway, so Gopher falls by the wayside. We all know the modern web happens, and at first it's pretty great. It becomes more popular. Um, Everyone gets used to things being free, which means an advertising-driven ecosystem. The dot-com bubble bursts. Adverts are no longer enough to support a website. Advertisers have to become more malicious in order to continue serving free content, or like making money and keeping the business model of the internet free, so that people can serve free content with malicious trackers and stuff like that. Uh, the web becomes more and more bloated. The average size of the size of an average website just keeps going up and up and up with bigger, higher res images. Now the internet speeds are faster, more and more JavaScript that is completely unnecessary or just does like trivial stuff like animations, or most of the time it's just there to track you. Uh, the web becomes more and more bloated, and as the web becomes more bloated, browsers have to become more and more bloated to keep up with it, so they can actually render what they're being asked to render, because a browser is fairly useless if it can't actually show you what is on the internet. That's why no one uses uh, what's it called, W3M or something, the
Yeah.
text-based browser, yeah,
Okay.
or links. Like no one uses them because they can't do anything. Example, Dillo, great, well-written browser, can't do JavaScript, so most of the web doesn't work on it. Completely useless. Uh, yeah, and yeah, JavaScript is terrible and non-free and the bane of human existence. Lots of people don't like it. Lots of people don't like how the web became bloated and full of trackers and stuff. And this whole time, Gopher is just sitting there, like no one ever deleted my existence. Like you can still write stuff for me. Like you can still use browsers from the 90s to access me, and this whole time there's been like a few hobbyists clinging on to Gopher, and a few more people go like, Gopher is a nice escape from the bloated modern web, and but it still has a lot of holdovers from early like web. People didn't know what the internet would become, which is one of the biggest problems with HTTP, is that people didn't know what the internet would become, and so it wasn't designed to do what it now does, which is why you have to add stuff like CSS and stuff like JavaScript and all of these things, because it wasn't designed to do what it's used for, and that's why it's so bloated. Uh, they're basically bodges, and people are like, Gopher is nice because it reminds me of the simplicity of the early web, blah 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 blah. And then a bunch of people come together. Well, actually, I'm pretty sure it's mainly just one person called Solderpunk, uh, and this person is like, I don't know what their gender is, so I'm just going to refer to them as they them. Uh, this person is like, Gopher is a bit too shit, like it's a bit too bad, mainly because of the fact that it doesn't have it's like not very good for user security or privacy. Like it has problems. So let's like basically make a more modernized version of Gopher. that pretty much sticks to what Gopher can do, but also has modern accommodations for user security and privacy and stuff like that. And so you can think of Gemini as, I mean, it's a bit more than this, but you can basically think of Gemini as Gopher with TLS. TLS is you know the HTTPS, you know the S that you see at the end of
Mhm.
that. That's TLS. The encryption that is I forget what it stands for, but that's TLS. Uh, so unlike this is immediately an advantage that Gopher has. I mean that Gemini has over HTTP is that it is encrypted by default. There is no unencrypted protocol for Gemini. It is always encrypted. It forces TLS, unlike HTTP, which doesn't force HTTPS. Even though most modern browsers give you a big warning when you try and access a unencrypted HTTP address these days, so it's not really that much of a big deal. But you know, there you don't have the scourge of unencrypted connections that we still have, even if it's a minority of websites these days. No matter how old a Gemini page is, it's going to be encrypted because it's encrypted by default. It forces encryption, which is a +1 for privacy and security. So, what actually is Gemini? Gemini is a, a protocol for serving text documents over the internet that is uh, heavier than Gopher, lighter than the web, and doesn't intend to replace either of them. And that last line is the most important part about Gopher, I mean, about Gemini, that no one seems to fucking understand. If you look up Gemini on YouTube or whatever, you'll probably find DistroTube's video about how Gemini is going to save the web. And you're probably going to find Luke Smith's video about how Gemini is terrible because it's way too limited to do things that you need to do. And all of these things. And both of these, the videos praising Gemini, the videos disparaging Gemini, all get it completely fucking wrong. They all get it completely fucking wrong. They're all idiots. Luke Smith is a complete and total idiot because his video pissed me off the most because he's a retard. His video is about his video is like it's called uh, something like why I don't use Gemini brackets. Luke Smith praises JavaScript question mark with like a soy face in the fucking thumbnail or something. He's just a retard. Uh, and he basically says Gemini is bad because no one's gonna hop over to your protocol when it can't even do basic shit like display images or uh, and web designers are so used to having access to the tools that JavaScript enables them to do. Free open source Libra JavaScript is perfectly fine, and when used responsibly by web developers, JavaScript is actually a really good tool. Like Gemini is just worse, and I'm never going to switch to Gemini. Yeah, no one wants you to switch to Gemini. Like you wouldn't use HT. Here's my analogy.
Mhm.
I've actually thought of I spent like an hour thinking about this analogy. Okay, so you have a friend that lives in a different lives far away from you, and you want to send them a message. No internet. You want to send them a message. You have two options. Option A, you could use the postal service protocol, where you write a letter, you send it in the post, and it arrives at their door, and they can read the letter. Or you could use the aeroplane protocol by hiring a stunt pilot to fly over to their house and do skywriting to write with smoke your message in the sky. Obviously, which one would you use?
Mm,
You would probably use the postal service
yeah, probably.
logically. I mean, unless you had some specific reason to do skywriting, there are probably some instances where skywriting is useful. That's why it exists. But 99% of the time, writing a letter through the post makes more sense. Would you agree?
Yep.
Yes, you would agree. Now, let's say you want to go visit that friend in real life. What are you going to do? Get a really big box, sit inside the box, and post yourself to them? Or are you going to get in a fucking aeroplane and fly there? You're going to get in an aeroplane and fly there. Imagine how ridiculous it would be to be like, yeah, airplanes are bloated. I'm going to switch to mail. It doesn't make any fucking sense. They serve different purposes. You could just have both.
Yeah.
That's what Gemini is for. Sure, you could do skywriting. Sure, you could host text document over HTTP. Like, in fact, there are many reasons you would want to do that. If you want, for example, over the top features such as columns, like uh, or any style scripting. Like, okay, Mister, you want to have fucking different fonts on your okay. Like, if you want all of that fancy shit, then use HTTP. If you just want to serve a plain text document with hyperlinks and, that sort of thing, there's no reason to use HTTP. You could just use Gemini for that. It's simpler, it gets the job done better, it's more secure. You physically can't do tracking, you physically can't do ads, you physically can't do cookies. Like, it is the best way to avoid all of these problems with the modern web. You physically can't do them. It is too simple and basic to let you.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, it's a good solution for curing the illnesses of the internet for very specific circumstances, and not as a complete replacement. It says it right there on the Gemini homepage, which is I should probably tell you what it is, but I need to fucking remember what it is. Uh, I it is probably Gemini something. It says backspace goes home, but backspace has never worked to go home in this browser, so I don't know what the fuck that's about.
Yeah, you
Um,
fucking Unix hack too hard.
yeah, it's called Gemini dot circumlunar dot space. Uh, circumlunar dot
Yeah,
space.
awesome.
And
That's my tip digger.
it's also an HTTP site. Like, it's on everything.
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty sure it's on Gopher as well. Uh, so uh, yeah, Gemini, and it's literally the one of the first lines you'll read in that website is that it's heavier than Gopher, lighter than the web, and doesn't replace either. Then strives for maximum power to rate ratio. Hey, it's just like a car, like some sort of Formula One car. You have to have power to weight ratio. Right? Obviously, the bigger your engine is, the more power you can do. But if your engine is too big, then it weighs the car down. That's the metaphor they're using, and it takes user privacy very seriously. Uh, uh, and then there's a bunch of shit about what Gemini is. So to start off, if you try and go to a Gemini, which they call a capsule, which is so fucking stupid. It's so stupid. If you try and go to a gem capsule on a
Gemcap.
Firefox or Brave or Chrome or whatever you Zoomers are using these days, it won't work because your browser doesn't know how to read gem text, which is the Gemini markup language instead of HTML. You have to on which tells your browser how to read gem text, or you have to use a Gemini specific browser. One of the great things about having a text only protocol or text based protocol is that they work great in terminal, unlike with Linux or W3M, where the modern web just completely breaks when you try and see it in a terminal. Gemini works flawlessly. In fact, I use a terminal-based browser, Amphora, as my main Gemini client because there is no reason not to. Uh, Another cool thing about Gemini is that one of the things that web designers really hate, and I really like it, which is the fact that they don't have control over how their gem capsule looks. I have control over how their gem capsule looks. Fuck you, web designers. I am the captain now. If I want everything to be colors that fit my system rice, I can fucking do that. Fuck
Hell
you.
yeah.
Yeah, that's nice. I like that.
Yeah.
Uh, so yeah, that's pretty much it. One of the other advantages of Gemini is that HTML has become very bloated as the web has become very bloated. Right? Like
Mm-hmm.
HTML is basic. Like, people make a meme about how, like, oh yeah, I know how to program. Oh yeah, what language do you know? HTML. Haha, funny. HTML isn't a programming language, but it fucking might as well be with how complicated it has become. Gemtext is incredibly simple. It's basically markup, but even more simplified than markup. Uh, it's you can you like If you type text, it just displays that text. You don't have to do anything. You don't even need tags to tell it that this is text. Like it will just know. Uh, it's it just works. It's very simple and minimal, and the more simple and minimal something is, the less likely it is to break and be shit. Uh, it circumvents all of the problems with malicious cookies and trackers by being so simple you physically can't do that. Everything is a static site. It's great. Uh, uh, yeah, pretty much. Instead of waiting for Joe Biden to legislate away the ability for companies to track you on the internet, which is probably never going to happen. They just made a better internet where they can't. It's not actually a better internet where they can't. As I've been joking this whole time, Gemini is incredibly limited and has a pretty small use case. But I like to say that creativity comes from limitations. Like you might say, why would you ever use a Game Boy to make music when you have Pro Tools or Logic that has all of these options? Why would you use a Game Boy that can only do 4 channels of basic waveforms? Because it can only do 4 channels of basic waveforms.
Oh no,
That limitation, you can do all sorts of. Go on,
oh,
go
Mister,
on, bully me.
Mister, oh, if you don't learn Ableton, you're a retard. No, thank you.
And when did I say that? Find me a quote of when I said that. Prove it
You,
to the court right now.
you've heavily implied that on countless occasions.
I have not. I've said that if you want to learn a DAW, okay, I don't even use Ableton. I use Logic. I recommend Ableton to people because I regret learning Logic because Ableton is cross-platform and better in various ways. If you don't want to learn a DAW, if you want to learn a tracker software for the Game Boy, then you should probably learn LSDJ or Nanoloop. They serve different purposes.
Yeah, it's just, that specific example given the conversations we've had about this topic.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Oh, those might go okay. Hey, no thank you. I figured out the way I could make music. Then no thank you goes like, oh, those might, but that's not as good as just using Ableton.
You were overcomplicating things for no reason.
That's true. That's true.
You were doing the opposite of what I'm saying. I'm saying to go simpler. You were being like, yeah, I can record. Hey, instead of pressing record on my computer, what if I stick a microphone up my ass and then fart in melodic patterns? What if I spend 10 years in the Mojave Desert training with desert tribes people who have an ancient cultivated skill to fart at specific frequencies for their traditional music, and then I teach myself to do that, and then I
Yeah, what if I do that? No, thank
ass.
you. No, thank you. What if I consult the flatulent shamans for my fucking musical development?
You know what? If you did that, I would. That might be based. That might actually fit under the definition of based.
Yeah.
So yeah, to access Gemini space, which is what they call like the HTTP space, is the web or the World Wide Web. So to access Gemini space, which is all of the Gemini capsules, you need a Gemini browser. I recommend Lagrange or Amphora, but there are a million different browsers, all of which are fairly good because Gemini is a very, very simple protocol, and so it's very simple to make a browser that can render it. Unlike the web, where it's almost, the web is such a fucking complicated, bloated mess that only like 3 companies have the resources to actually make a browser, and all other browsers are just based on those other like Qt browser, which I use for my main browser, is based off of what is it, Qt3? What am I thinking of? Qt Web Engine, which is what Chrome is built on. Like it was made by Google for Chrome. Like it's just so complicated that you can't do it yourself. You need a lot of resources of a big company. Gemini is not like that. You can probably, if you know how to program, you can probably program a Gemini browser. There are already about 50 though, so you probably shouldn't. And also a lot of Gemini browsers can also read Gopher sites as well, which is useful. So that was sort of the technical aspects. How long have I been rambling for? Because I will just
40
go on for
minutes.
2 days. Oh my god. Anyway, that was like the technical aspect of Gemini. Now the social aspect of Gemini, because it doesn't matter how good a protocol is if you can't convince your normie friends to use it, as I found out with Matrix. No, that's not actually what I mean. Like, if there's nothing, if there's no websites, it doesn't matter if it's a better programmed web. Like it matters what content is on there. You
Mhm.
know what I mean? Like that's part of what means it's quality. Right now, since it's still a very baby protocol, like it was only made a few years ago, pretty much, and it's mostly filled up with like like a lot of the discussion you'll find on Gemini is people talking about Gemini because it's so new,
Mhm.
uh, which was also the case on the early internet. But one of the things about Gemini that is interesting is that it's not just trying to recreate the feeling of like early Usenet or whatever. Like it is trying to be its own thing. I like that. Uh, so yeah, most of the people who use Gemini come from a community of people who sort of call themselves the small internet, which is pretty self-explanatory. They're trying to break away from large monolithic centralized internet that has developed into sort of smaller text-based communities, normally with an emphasis on like making stuff accessible for people with slow connections or very old computers, uh, which I like, obviously, as someone who uses a ThinkPad. You ever try to use Twitch on a ThinkPad? You ever try and browse twitch.tv on a ThinkPad? It just doesn't work. It's just too full of JavaScript.
Damn.
Uh, I mean, it works, but it's very, very RAM intensive. And also, even like modern web browsers, like there's a meme about how Chrome eats your RAM because it has to because the web is so
I mean,
bloated.
all of it is because I could fucking optimize its RAM usage to the amount you have available. So you always have Chrome as like a percentage of your RAM, so that inflates how much it uses your RAM, but like, that's another thing.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Thank you for teaching me. But yeah, Gemini will not have that problem because it's just basically rendering text. Uh, so yeah, the whole small internet thing, they're all about this sort of philosophy, but it's not like one of the things I was surprised at is how it's not like a hug box. Like people will have arguments and debates and disagree with each other. Like two people. They don't call them blogs; they call them gem logs, which is retarded. Blogs, two people's blogs. Uh, um,
Oh, it's not
I
a vape blog, it's a gym blog.
I fucking hate it. I hate why people can't just realize that they're colloquial turns of speech that just mean like they don't literally mean what they say anyway. Uh, that is the worst thing about Gemini is that people don't know how to fucking talk in English. So yeah, a lot of these sorts of things they you know express a variety of opinions and all sorts of things, political and otherwise, which is nice. But generally, people are friendly, which is surprising, but also probably because it's a fairly small community
I
where
mean,
kind of everyone knows each other.
people recently have become way friendlier online, I've noticed.
That's true, actually. Yeah,
I think people are
um,
just tired of not being friendly.
yeah. I think people got bored of it,
Yeah.
but yeah, but it kind of fits into my thing about how you need to have some obscurity in whatever you're like doing in life because when it comes to other people because having some sort of like obscurity which means there's some technical barrier to entry or something means that people have already invested some effort into getting there and are less likely to be shit once they are there, like they will value it more.
Hey, no, thank you. Have you heard this? Have you heard of this thing? It's called Eurbit.
Yeah, I've heard of you a bit. I don't understand it and I want you to do a lecture on it.
I don't understand it either. I've used it like once. Like basically, the point is that everyone
I
on
think it
Eurbit.
might be a scam.
It's kind of like, hey, you know how like web browsers are like operating systems. Like Eurbit is like just like the final permutation of that.
I
it's
mean, it's
it's
interesting. I just don't understand it, and I've never found someone who explains it.
it's like it's like imagine if you had like a virtual machine running a custom operating system, kind of like a bit. Wait, so it's also like a storage server system.
That's, I mean, it sounds like interesting.
It's really interesting.
It
Yeah.
has been in development for like 20 years, and
Yep.
doesn't seem like anything has happened to
I mean, it keeps being developed.
it. I guess so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I bet it is interesting. Um, if I needed to store files, I would probably use IPFS though.
I mean, Orbit isn't useful right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, generally there's a lot. Obviously, as a text-based protocol, there's focuses on writing. So one of the more well-known gem spaces, which is also it's actually I'm pretty sure just a mirror of the HTTP site,
Mm-hmm.
is midnight.pub, which is sort of emulate like it. There's a lot of these sort of pseudo fictional spaces where
Mm-hmm.
people sort of participate in a role playing game to various degrees. So midnight.pub is very light role play where the idea is you have conversations with people that you would have in a pub at midnight, like sharing various philosophical thoughts and basically short blog posts like that. Um, there's ones that are much more focused on role playing. There's one which I can't fucking remember the name. Cosmic.voyage, which is everyone role plays as if they're on a cosmic voyage in a spaceship talking to each other, uh, which is pretty neat. Like the idea is uh, each spaceship, for some fictional reason, I haven't actually looked into it that much, so I only am like going on very vague knowledge from briefly skimming the website once. But like it seems like there's some fictional thing about how each of these spaceships only sends like small amounts of text data because something speed
Mm-hmm.
efficiency blah blah blah, and that's the excuse for it being Gemini. A lot of Gemini sites that are interactive are basically what's called pubnixes, which is also where a lot of Gemini users come from. They're kind of an overlapping community. A pubnix is a public Unix machine. So you know how Unix machines, like, you can create different users. Like you have the root user, and then you might have Dotsmite user, and then you could create a no thank you user or a lame user. You know, you can create all of these users with various permissions.
I mean, every
Uh,
user would be lane.
well, yeah.
Yeah, you'd have like lane 1, lane 2, lane 3.
uh, Basically a pubnix is a machine that you SSH. You email the guy that runs it, and they're like, "Sure, I'll make you a user," and then you SSH into it, and then you can sort of. It's like a weird sort of social network. It's a really interesting concept, but a lot of Gemini. The more it seems like some of the more interactive Gemini spaces are sort of like front ends for pubnixes. Like that's how they do it, which is really interesting. There are more direct pubnixes. They're a bit beyond the scope of this, but I think they call themselves like tilde spaces or something because the
Mm-hmm.
first one was called tilde.town. Um, they have their own sort of community, and
Mm-hmm.
I, I personally find it a little hugboxy for my personal likings, but uh, they're nice people, and you'll find a lot of them on GemSpace. If
That's cool.
in GemSpace, in GemSpace. Uh, so yeah, that's Gemini. Um, I, Even if this doesn't sound that interesting to you, a Gemini browser is like megabytes. Like they're tiny because it's a tiny protocol. Uh, so there is very little harm in checking it out. Go to there are aggregators like the two big ones are Capcom and Spacewalk. Capcom, I believe, is run by the same person that developed Gemini. Uh, Spacewalk is just another aggregator. They're literally just places which keep track of lots of different Gemini spaces, and then when someone updates their blog or whatever, it will show that. So that's a good way to find interesting sites. There's also a Spanish one if you're interested, if you speak Spanish.
I think I
Uh,
should probably set up like a DCRS Gemini mirror.
that would DCRS would be perfect for Gemini. Like that
Mm-hmm.
is yeah, it's pretty much perfectly suited.
Like
Uh,
I don't know if my vape host could do it.
I don't know how it works. I'm looking in. I would like to set one up too, but I don't know if I can or how I would do that. There are
Yeah,
tutorials on YouTube. I watched a tutorial and didn't really understand it.
yeah, I have a vape host. I just don't know how it would interact with Gemini.
What web host is it?
I use Host.
Okay, I don't know why I thought that I would know what that meant. So
It's
yeah,
a cheap Russian web hosting company, one of the more reliable and cheaper ones. Like it's not that affordable or anything. It just you know,
yeah.
if you're in the web hosting market, Host I can recommend.
Well, give it a shot. I'm sure it's not that difficult.
Yeah, I'll look into it.
So yeah, that's Gemini. Uh, any questions?
Uh, why use Gemini when you can't see Tatum pussy on Gemini? Riddle me this, no thank you.
Um, Precisely for that reason.
That seems like a very limited use case. What do we even do?
Yeah, Gemini, not for Kumas. Although I'm sure someone has made like uh, erotic fiction on Gemini. Like someone has to. It must exist somewhere. And if they
Uh,
haven't, then I will be the first one to do it.
a no thank you Gemini hentai collection.
ASCII, it's all in ASCII. Because it's text based, people do a lot of ASCII,
Oh, that's really cool.
mostly for like banners and stuff. It's still like a baby mode. It's like I'm sure people are going to get way more creative with, or if it grows, which is why I'm shilling it. I'm not actually shilling it. I'm trying to be very clear that I'm not shilling it as a like. It's not a replacement for the web. It's incredibly limited and broken in no, not broken, but like uh, there is dumb shit about it. Like you can't do columns, you can't have inline linking, you can't display images. Like there were a bunch of dumb shit, which is like, why not though? Like that wouldn't really compromise the vision. Like how I like to see images on my webpage. Like maybe let people display images. That's a bit stupid. Uh, but yeah,
Yeah.
it is what it is. It's an interesting thing. It's not like a mind blowing. This will save the internet and save the world. It's more like here's a place you could come hang out from time to time.
Yeah.
So that's Gemini. Any more questions, or are we done?
Uh, yeah, I think that's about it for me.
All right.
Yeah, that's
I
still
wish I could show my gem space at the end of this, but I can't because I don't have one.
sad.
The traditional vape at the end of the episodes.
Yep. Right, we can end now. We have vaped. We have done the vape.
We've done the ceremony. The ceremony has been complete.
The ceremony of the fucking vape. See ya.